Hi all, welcome to Cultural Anthropology C111, Fall 2018. This is going to be the first lecture that I record for week number 1. A lot of the material that is in your guided lesson will be covered today. And I wanted to touch a little bit more on the syllabus. Make sure that you pay attention to, special attention to grades. It's 3 points per week. Remember, your grade is out of 100 points total. Try not to fall behind. Those 3 points per week start to add up. Again, let's say that you are kind of off your game for 3 weeks in a row. You've now missed 9 points, and you're kind of looking more towards the B range. So it's very important to kind of stay on top of that. I reviewed a lot of this stuff, all of it, in the orientation video, which is already posted in Module 1, Week 1. So make sure that you go back and look through that if you need to. This last term here says key informants. The reason why I put that up there is to introduce you to a term. When you guys do your ethnography papers, key informants become very important in terms of how you get your information from that culture itself. And the other part to that key informant piece is kind of housekeeping. I recommend that you create a key informant out of somebody else in the class. Whether it be getting their cell phone information or email address. I know that we have access to the students and myself in the class through discussion posts and stuff. You may want some added extra backup in terms of plan, and I recommend kind of forming that relationship with an individual in the class. All right, text and schedule. Barbara Miller's 7th edition textbook is required. Also, supplemental readings will be required and used as well. And this week I have Ancient Society. If you guys want to read the whole thing, go for it. I did in my undergrad, but that is not a challenge to you. It is long. It is written in Old English, but the first chapter is the assigned chapter. As you scrolling through the PDF, I think it's pages 17 through 32. And you can expect supplemental readings and supplemental videos throughout the course. Notebooks. I tend to require notebooks. Obviously, there's no way for me to truly kind of keep track of this for you. I think that it's very, very important to have, especially in an online course where I'm going to do video lecture a lot. You may want to be able to take kind of class notes or lecture notes. This is how I would break up the notebook, just to keep it organized. And again, this is your kind of thing, right? I mean, you guys are going to have midterms or midterm and a final that you're going to be able to take at home. So ultimately, if you had a notebook with all this stuff in it, it would be very simple. And I would break the notebook down like this: lecture notes, anthropologist, theorist, concepts and theories, terms of vocabulary, class activities and simulations. This may be some of the discussion posts or some of those other things that we do. And then the interviews for your ethnography information as well. So, kind of nitty-gritty in terms of where did anthropology come from? I first start with the caveat is that everybody from the beginning of time, humans and even I guess animals to a certain degree, use the skill of observation and analyzing. And at its very basic core, that's what anthropology is to observe other human beings and analyze that information. Cultural is going to be focused more on that living piece. And then I'll get into the 4 subfields in a second, which is very important for today. Before today, just realize that the Axial Age, we're talking about 500 BCE, is this time period that the philosopher Karl Jaspers kind of coined and believed that human change kind of came to an impetus at this time period, 500 BC, where you just see an astounding amount of individuals and societies changing kind of their mentality around things, and they would say that it's a shift from the mythical to the theoretical. And if you look at a lot of these guys on here, I'll go through a few of them. A lot of them you guys have known because these are who we learn about in world history. So the piece here is moving from a mythical to a theoretical stage, which is where do I as an individual fit into this universe, and then where does our society fit into this universe? So Karl Jaspers is the philosopher there. He kind of coins the term. Confucius, obviously, more of a philosophy on how to form society, less of a religion, obviously. Lao Tzu he's the one given credit for Taoism, and again, very relational with nature, kind of throwing off kind of the worldly stuff. Buddha, I feel like you guys probably know who Buddha is. Same time period as all of these individuals. So you have Confucius, you have Taoism, you have Buddhism. Jainism is also going to kind of pop up around this time, and Buddhism and Jainism are both very into asceticism, which is the denial of kind of um, self and kind of becoming one with the universe and nature and whatnot. Pythagoras, the Greek mathematician, also led a cult, and they were vegetarians and believed in transmigration of souls or reincarnation. Heraclitus is one of my favorite German philosophers, kind of a Stoic philosopher. Very important in the formation of the dialectic, and we will talk about that a lot. And then Jewish leaders as well. Now, all of these guys are up here, and you could say that people had thought of these things in terms of theoretical and where do I fit into this universe for a very, very long time. The difference is that things start to get written down here. So again, human beings have been doing anthropology for a very long time, but these are the individuals who are going to take that theory and move it into writing and canonize it. All right, history and anthropology. I just threw in Hero of Alexandria. He's kind of my favorite Greek scientist anyway. He's usually they give him credit for the steam engine, the creation of the steam engine. And also he is the first to develop the vending machine. Put in a coin, out comes holy water. And this became kind of a religious battle in Alexandria where you had multiple religions kind of competing at the same time. Herodotus, Greek historian, he's considered the father of history. And anthropologists a lot of times put him as the first because he actually does ethnography. Now, ethnography is when anthropologists go out into the field, they collect data, observation and analysis, and then they write it down. And Herodotus does this. Marco Polo, I don't know that people would say necessarily that he's an anthropologist, but he travels to China, he spends a lot of time there, and he writes it down again. George Wilhelm Hegel, this is his version of the dialectic we'll get into a lot. The dialectic is the idea of a thesis, right? So let's say that I say, it's a nice day outside. And then somebody comes up with an antithesis and they say, no, well, I actually prefer it to be cooler outside. Well, in that, we don't just stare at each other and are at odds. What we should do is come up with some kind of synthesis where I start to agree and say, you know what, actually it is kind of hot. Or this individual says, you know what, but it's still a nice day. And then we leave kind of smiling at each other that we've kind of had this communication device, but we're not totally just staring at each other at odds. And I would argue that in today's kind of United States political structure, the dialectic has kind of gone away or has been hidden, especially in that synthesis part. A lot of times one party will come up with something and the other party will just say, no, we're not going to do that. And that is not necessarily a productive way to run social programs and a society in general. Now, this dialectic also is applied, and this is kind of where I'm going to front load a little bit about your learning. A lot of times, learning can be a dialectic process as well. Sorry, I'm going to move around a bit. The sun just kind of shifted on me. The internal dialectic was thought up by George Herbert Mead. And George Herbert Mead believed basically that if I'm a self, right, I have this structure of self, and I'm exposed to new information, I have to synthesize that new information, and either I'm going to throw it off and not accept it, or it's going to change myself a bit. Now, even being exposed to that information, you have changed yourself to a certain degree. This is that synthesis piece, and this is what's going to happen in this class. Either I'm going to say something and you're going to agree with it, right? And then that's going to change yourself and your understanding of people and human beings. Or you're going to use conflict theory, which is basically that you don't agree, and you don't have to agree with me. That's not what school is all about. So you use conflict theory and you basically throw that off because you like your traditional self currently, okay? But in that process, you have still solidified yourself, or your belief structure has become more um, kind of solid around that process. But nonetheless, this is basically the internal dialectic and knowledge transfer, and which is what I'm doing right now, is transferring information to you. And then either using conflict theory or just kind of accepting the knowledge transfer to change self, right? And that's George Herbert Mead. So he's a sociologist. Anthropology tends to use him a lot when we get into personality and culture. Very important, but also an application of not only Heraclitus, his initial form of dialectic, and then George Wilhelm Hegel. Lewis Henry Morgan and Franz Boas, very important names. This is where we actually get anthropologists. They call themselves anthropologists. Lewis Henry Morgan, end of kind of the 1800s, into the becomes kind of famous around cultural evolution. His whole first chapter that I'm going to have you read is around cultural evolution, and it's his foremost kind of book, Ancient Society. It's where he puts his theory out. Franz Boas comes and turns that on its head and basically says, no, that it's not about how human beings have evolved. It's more about function and how what we do and the institutions that we have in certain cultures, how do they function to keep us together as a cohesive unit? And he utilized what he called cultural relativity, which is, I have no place to judge another culture since I was born to the culture that I'm in, and I didn't choose which culture I was born into. I didn't choose the skin color that I have. I did not choose my parents. We do not have choice over those processes. Those are basically we happen into those things. And ultimately, Morgan's theory of cultural evolution just says, well, these people over here are not as smart and they don't do kind of what we do as civilized people, so they're lesser than. But again, Boas basically says, yeah, but you're judging, you're getting into structures of judgment, and cultural relativity would basically say that it doesn't even make sense to do that. So Franz Boas is a cultural relativist through and through, judging others, whether it be so-called race. In anthropology, race is not a thing. It's environmentally determined, and we refer to them as Kleins. And ultimately, Boas is one of these people that starts to move in that direction. So these last two are absolutely anthropologists. We're going to talk about them a lot. I do hints for quizzes. These two would be very big hints in terms of who's going to show up next. What is anthropology? So anthropos is Greek for man. Now remember, the term man has changed. It used to be human as a general term, not a biological sex or gender, even if people are going to lump those together, even though we don't do that in anthropology either. Ology is the study of, so it's basically the study of human beings, and it's all human beings. We have 4 subfields in anthropology. Sometimes there's a fifth. These are the 4. This is also a big hint. Biological physical is more the DNA, evolution, primatology, all of that stuff falls under biological physical. Archaeology is the study of artifacts. Human remains, not necessarily the bones, but we're talking about material culture. Anything manipulated by humans and that is in kind of past is going to be archaeology. Now, it could be everything from a house that George Washington stayed in during the Revolutionary War, which would be historic archaeology, to things 10,000 years ago found in the desert here, like arrow points or pottery or any of those kinds of things. Linguistics is the study of language, okay? And it's a very specific subfield. I call this kind of the math version of anthropology. It's very symbolic and math-like. Linguists are very talented individuals. And then sociocultural is what this class is, and that's what we're going to be looking at. Now, the 5th subfield a lot of times is referred to as applied, and they lump a lot of things into applied. So applied anthropology can be everything from somebody who's doing policy analysis on fixing things, but it could also be an individual who's doing using anthropology in maybe a corporate setting, doing corporate culture. That would be an applied anthropologist. And remember, these are the 4 subfields, and I'll just kind of run through the slides here. Physical anthropology, these are all those things. Archaeology, linguistic, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, I should probably explain a little bit. That's that language determines thought and behavior, and sociolinguistics is that culture determines language.